The hits just keep on coming for NASCAR fans. We lost another one. How's it going, everyone? My name is Eric and welcome to Out of the Groove. Kind of an impromptu episode here. It's 3:15 in the morning and I just couldn't sleep because I had all these thoughts rolling around in my head, and I'm like, you know what better time than now to sit down in front of the camera and spill them out. Because earlier today, or I guess it's now early Friday morning, but anyway, early Thursday morning, NASCAR driver Kasey Kahne, who drives the 95 car for Levi Family Racing in the Cup Series, announced that he was going to be stepping away from full-time racing in NASCAR at the end of this season. And this was honestly a shock to pretty much everyone, because the last we checked in on Kasey Kahne and that 95 car, we knew that they were in talks to potentially change manufacturers and switch to Toyota and align with JGR for next season. And that, at least what I thought, and I talked about this in my episode a few days ago, and what a lot of you guys thought was that that was a good thing for Kasey Kahne and that team, because anytime you align with JGR, we've seen what how Furniture Row has benefited. That's usually a good thing. So less than 48 hours ago, I was really optimistic for Kasey Kahne's future in NASCAR, and now to hear this bombshell of a news story Thursday morning, I had to react to it. So while this announcement by itself is, kind of sad and, just kind of makes you think, but it also is very interesting because I'm going to look at some of Kasey Kahne's comments and his official statement that he gave out, and it kind of ties back into some similar themes and some other comments we've heard from other people around the sport, and I think it might just be kind of interesting to talk about some of them. So here we go. Before I get into the super interesting things, I want to kind of just give a quick rundown on Kasey Kahne and his career. He had 18 wins over about 15 years in the Cup Series. I think a little over 527 starts. So 18 wins, that's a pretty good career. When he first burst onto the scene in the mid-2000s, driving that 9 car, he had 6 wins in I think his 3rd full-time season. He seemed like a pretty big deal. He built up quite the impressive fan base, and after those first couple years were really hot for him, he kind of cooled off a little. And then he went to Red Bull Racing and drove the 4 car for them for a couple of years, and it was iffy. Eventually that team kind of fell apart, but then Kasey Kahne found himself in what honestly seemed like a great scenario, going to Hendrick Motorsports to drive that 5 car. And this was back, if you're a new fan, you may not remember this or know this, but that was back when Hendrick Motorsports had just won 5 straight championships with Jimmy Johnson, and they were the toughest team in the garage to beat. So Kasey Kahne was driving one of their cars. 2012, I think, was his best points finish. He finished 4th in points that year. 2013, he was winning races. But then 2014, he was barely able to sneak into the playoffs, and really the last couple of years, he spent 2015, 2016, and 2017 with Hendrick Motorsports. The performance consistently started to get worse. He managed to make the playoffs last year in 2017 after he got that clutch win at Indianapolis, but really the last couple of years had been quite disappointing for Kasey Kahne. Ultimately, that's kind of what led to him running into sponsorship issues and why Hendrick chose to let him go. He was picked up by Levi Family Racing, a single car team, to maybe help, get their program started, maybe back in the right direction. And he's run okay this year, but he's been a 25th place car most weeks. But like I said at the beginning of the episode, the rumors of them switching to Toyota was definitely a reason to be optimistic, so that's why this news is shocking. But there's a basic rundown on Kasey Kahne's career, in a nutshell. I can't really do a guy justice like that, just trying to summarize his whole career in a couple minutes, but I've always liked Kasey Kahne. Kasey Kahne's always been one of the most popular drivers in the sport, even to this day. So that's why this news is big to a lot of fans. I've always liked Kasey Kahne. He's been an easy guy to root for. So I wish him the best of luck. But now I want to get into diving into some of his statements and talking about what they possibly mean in the bigger picture. First and foremost, the one quote that stuck out to me when I first read his official statement was this one. In his statement, he said that the grueling schedule of NASCAR takes a toll on your quality of life. And the reason I found that statement interesting is because that's the second big name driver we've heard say that in the last couple of years. Remember back when Carl Edwards shockingly announced his retirement just ahead of the 2017 season about a year and a half ago. One of his biggest main points was that, NASCAR and driving in the Cup Series, 36 races, or it's really more like 38 races or so, it's over 40 weeks a year. His point was that it's a very difficult schedule to manage. It really doesn't give you any time for anything else, and that was one of the biggest reasons Carl Edwards was comfortable moving away from it back then, because he had other things he wanted to do. So when Kasey Kahne makes that statement, it really just it echoes what Carl Edwards said almost exactly. Kasey Kahne is 38 years old now. Carl Edwards was 37 years old. And now, while if you're a baseball, basketball, football player, you might be like, yeah, that's perfect age for retirement. NASCAR drivers even lately, when, drivers are retiring younger and younger, 37, 38 is still pretty young. I mean, Junior was in his 40s. Stewart Gordon were in their mid-40s. That's still the norm. So it's interesting to hear these guys that still had reasons to be optimistic in their careers, still in their 30s, series kind of decide to hang it up. And it makes me wonder if there's any other drivers out there that maybe could be following down the same path. I mean, what kind of young guys that are out there now? So many of these Cup drivers are getting into the sport now when they're 21, 22. By the time they're 38, 39, they've been in the series 17, 18 years, they might be ready to retire. This could start a more continuous trend over the next few years, and that's why I think it's just interesting to see, the thought process behind Edwards and now Kasey Kahne's decisions. So anyway, that was just a quick thing I wanted to mention. Kasey Kahne goes on to say some other things that I thought were interesting, and that might point more towards what his future plans hold. He said, "I need to spend more time doing the things I enjoy and love, and that's spending time with Tanner," who's his 2-year-old son, "and my sprint car teams." And this is another pretty big takeaway, I think, from this report, is that Kasey Kahne does own some World of Outlaws cars, dirt racing series. Kasey Kahne's raced dirt before. He's a big dirt racer. He owns a dirt racing team, so he's a big deal over there. And then obviously he has a young son who, every parent, I'm not a parent, but I can assume most parents would like to spend time with their young kids. So that's all very understandable, but I want to focus on the dirt racing thing because this is a thing that we've heard more often lately with guys like Kyle Larson, who's big in the dirt scene. He's made comments about how he wants to one day win a World of Outlaws championship. Or Christopher Bell, who's big in dirt. Now we have Kasey Kahne making these statements. It's interesting how some of these dirt racing guys that have come into NASCAR still really have a strong connection to dirt racing. And while this by itself doesn't really mean too much, it's going to mean a little bit more when I talk about my next point, but I just do think it's interesting that these dirt racing guys really, I'm not a big, I don't watch dirt racing very much. I've never been to a dirt race. I always wanted to go because I hear they're really, really fun, but I've never been able to. But these dirt races must be something really freaking spectacular. If these Cup guys that are making millions in the Cup Series still head out in the middle of the week. Larson will still run 2 or 3 dirt races a week sometimes, even though he's running a full-time Cup schedule. They must really, this dirt racing stuff, I know you guys are all going to say, oh yeah, it's great, but it must be incredible. It must be out of this world if these Cup guys are so devoted to it, even when they're in the prime of their Cup Series careers. So if you're a Kasey Kahne fan looking towards his future, it sounds like he's still going to be heavily involved with his World of Outlaws teams. He could possibly be racing dirt still very likely. So if you're a kind of person who's a big Kasey Kahne fan, lives near those short tracks, probably still going to be a chance for you to see your favorite driver compete. So that's at least kind of cool to hear that he's still going to be involved to some extent. But yeah, this dirt racing thing must be God's greatest gift to man, with the way these people seem to be acting. I'll probably have to get to one of those races at some point. But now this all leads into probably my biggest point of this episode, the biggest thing that I think this announcement really means as far as the whole sport is concerned, because we're all talking about the state of the sport these days. It's that Kasey Kahne, who's 38 years old, still relatively near the prime of his career. He's at the top level of stock car racing, making millions a year. It's the fact that he would choose to leave that all behind and step away from that, grueling schedule or not. It seems like he's stepping away from that because he wants to be more involved in this other series. He wants to be more involved, maybe just take some time off and spend it with his family. But the fact that he is willing to step away from NASCAR when things are looking okay for him in his career the next year or two perhaps, really says something. Especially because we've heard criticisms from some high-profile drivers that maybe could have contributed to this decision. Brad Keselowski a couple months ago, shortly after the All-Star Race restrictor plate package was run, made the comments that if NASCAR were to implement a restrictor plate All-Stars type package long-term consistently, that many of the world's top drivers would not want to come to NASCAR, and that the talent level in NASCAR would ultimately drop. That was what Brad Keselowski said, and lately we had a report a few weeks ago, there's been some more pretty hot spicy rumors I've seen lately that highly suggest that it is very likely we will see some sort of similar type all-star race package next year. It's very likely that we're going to see that type of racing at a lot of tracks in 2019. And maybe what Brad Keselowski said is more true than we thought. Kyle Larson has already made comments that he wants to race in dirt at some point in his career before he's too old. He wants to go to the World of Outlaws. Kyle Busch, Bubba Wallace, Brad Keselowski have all been outwardly critical of the proposed aero package for next season. And now we have Kasey Kahne, who's still in the prime of his career, really, choosing to step away from all that to pursue what I see as just a more fun type of racing, I guess, and that's what he must be thinking. And the thing that baffles me even more is that Motorsport.com also reported that Kasey Kahne had an offer from Stewart-Haas Racing to drive the 41 next year. Now, I know this is Motorsport.com, and they released that report about Kurt Busch and Jamie McMurray last week that some people may or may not be believing, but it is a major publisher, a major website, major source publishing this information, which makes me think it probably is true. So the fact that Kasey Kahne had offers not only from, a small team with Levine Family Racing, but maybe was going to have a good alliance going forward. He had an offer from them, and now it sounds like he might have had an offer from one of the top 2 or 3 teams in the sport, and he still turned them down. At least that's what this one source said. And so this is purely speculation because, there were plenty of reasons why Kasey Kahne is stepping away. But perhaps part of the reason he is choosing to leave NASCAR right now is because he doesn't like the direction the series is going. And if he's going to dedicate his whole calendar year to a series and to a sport, maybe he thinks he wants to be having more fun while he's doing it. And perhaps he doesn't think the NASCAR Cup Series is going to be that much fun going forward. These drivers know a lot more than we know, that's for sure. So that's really the big kind of eye-opener I see from this announcement. If Kasey Kahne is willing to step away, if we've gotten all these criticisms from high-profile drivers, this proposed aero package for next year with the restrictor plates, with the cars being slowed way down, artificial pack racing at a lot of intermediate tracks. When Keselowski said that was going to turn off some drivers from coming to NASCAR, I kind of laughed it off like, there's still money in NASCAR, they'll come, they'll be fine. But maybe he had more of a point than we gave him credit for, or at least than I gave him credit for. If Kasey Kahne's going to step away and we got other guys saying that they could do the same or that they're not in favor of it, maybe Keselowski was right. Keselowski's always one of the most outspoken drivers around the garage area, whether you like it or not, and this is a case where maybe he had a point, and maybe we should have listened to him a little closer. The last thing I want to quickly talk about is what this means for the NASCAR silly season going into 2019. Because if you watched my video from a couple days ago, I kind of brushed over the fact that the 95 car could be vacant because I fully believed that Kasey Kahne was still going to be in that car. But now that it's open, I want to talk briefly about maybe who could fill that seat, because there's a good chance that team will still be around, and there's a pretty good chance that team could be aligned with JGR, so that makes things interesting. Christopher Bell's name keeps coming up because he's the top driver in the Xfinity Series right now. He's going to almost guaranteed to be at Homestead for the Xfinity Series. Might win the championship. Probably the favorite to win the championship this year. He's been outspoken saying that he wants to be in the Cup Series. He doesn't want to waste any more time in the Xfinity Series. Those are his words, not mine. He doesn't want to waste any time there. He doesn't want to waste his prime down in the lower series. He wants to be in Cup Series, but we've talked about this. Toyota and JGR and Furniture Row really don't have any open seats for him, so his future is looking kind of cloudy. But now, if Levine Family Racing really, truly is going to switch to Toyota, which seems to be a pretty hot rumor, seems fairly likely, could Christopher Bell move into that car? Maybe for a year or two, and then maybe he moves to Gibbs or something else works out. But maybe he could move there because he'll at least be staying in the Toyota camp. It'll be like when Eric Jones, who was kind of a Joe Gibbs guy, went and drove for Furniture Row for a year, but then came to Gibbs. It could be something like that. I don't know how it would work, but now with the 95 being open, the odds of Christopher Bell being in the Cup Series next year definitely dramatically increased. Now, of course, Thursday he was asked about this whole incident. He said he had no idea Kasey Kahne was going to be making this announcement, that he, Christopher Bell I'm talking about, had not talked to any other teams about any Cup offers, so, maybe it's still unlikely, but there's plenty of time to make that adjustment, to make that change, to sign on Bell or look for sponsorship. It sounds like this Kasey Kahne thing was nobody really seemed to know about it until he announced it. It seems like he was pretty tight-lipped about it until this week, so that's kind of interesting. It's caught everyone by surprise. There are other names that could maybe go to the 95, if those other motorsport.com rumors are true and that McMurray could be out of a ride next year at Chip Ganassi. Maybe Jamie McMurray goes there. There's Matt DiBenedetto's a name that comes out. There's tons of other guys out there, but the Christopher Bell, if they switch to Toyota, makes the most sense to me, but, we can't be sure. Oh, but let me know what you guys think down in the comments. That's all I got for my, for the show. Talked a lot about Kasey Kahne today. I hope you guys found my points about how his announcement kind of ties into other big NASCAR storylines. I hope you guys found that at least sort of intriguing, but let me know what you guys think about that down in the comments. Does any of it mean anything, or is this just kind of an outlying incident with Kasey Kahne making a personal decision? What do you guys think? Let me know. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram. All those links are down below. Thanks for checking those out. And thanks, of course, to Michael Harrison and Kyle Hill and the rest of our wonderful Patreon sponsors. Wow, I really love seeing more names popping up here. It means so much to me that so many of you guys support the show. If you also want to support the show and get some little extras as well, check out the top link down below in the description. I really appreciate it because you guys are keeping this show moving forward, and it means a ton to me. Thank you. And yeah, thanks to everyone else for watching. I really appreciate all the support that all of you guys give me on every in every sense of the word. Got a fun episode planned for next week, and then the week after I'll be moved into my new official studio. So things are going to be looking pretty fun, and I'm excited to hit the ground running once the fall and the playoffs roll around. So this is gonna be an exciting time. So thanks again for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed. I'll see you guys again really soon. Have a great rest of your weekend. Enjoy Bristol, the world's fastest half mile, the last Coliseum, the whatever else, Thunder Valley. I don't know what other nicknames it has. It's Bristol, baby. Enjoy, because hopefully it'll probably be a pretty good one. It usually is.